I was part of the previous government and, of course, served in various capacities, as I earlier said. Together with friends, we've come and we've learned from the mistakes that were made in the past.
Yes, Brian Mundubile was part of Zambia's previous government under Edgar Lungu. But today he is in the opposition, promising brighter days for Zambians if elected on August this year.
Now, United Nations reports suggest that Zambia's debt grew from 16% to 140% of GDP from 2010 through 2020 when Edgar Lungu's tenure ended. So if the previous government failed to reset the country's economy, can the people trust that Mundubile can now deliver?
What I bring out as regards industrialization and creating jobs in the mining sector, in the agricultural sector, in the tourism sector, in the digital economy are all contained in our party manifesto.
Now, every political camp is flooding the airwaves with promises. But how do you separate the empty rhetoric from an actionable plan?
And do Zambians think an opposition leader like Mundubile could be a better alternative?
Problem is politicians really have a lot to say, but they haven't put in much time to really listen to what we have to say. So if it could be the other way around and they considered what we really want, it would be better.
And I honestly understand that frustration, but at its heart, the 2026 election is an opportunity for Zambians to choose the direction that will guide them for the next 5 years.
Now, Zambia's 2026 general elections, that is our conversation today right here under the Baobab.
A very big hello. My name is Jojo Kachi and we welcome you to Under the Baobab.
And I am Mimi Mefoneu. Under the Baobab, it's always a pleasure to have you with us. On this show, we break down Africa's biggest issues and we make them so personal with you.
Yes, we do that every week. We speak with policymakers, political leaders, experts shaping the continent. And what we ask from you is to subscribe and join the conversation. You must be part of this conversation.
Today, George, and for the next few weeks or months, like in the next 3 months from now, we will be having our eyes on Zambia. This landlocked southern African nation of nearly 23 million people is going to be heading to the polls on the 13th of August this year. So, George, I guess that if we were somewhere right now having this conversation, right, with the guests, we're going to be in trouble, if we were in Lusaka.
In Lusaka.
You know why, of course.
Yeah, definitely. I get what you're saying, and maybe you hinting at this. It's called Public Gathering Bill number 1 that is currently being debated, and that will only happen if that bill is passed. But I totally understand where you are hinting at.
Right. This proposed law could place tougher restrictions on public gatherings, including requiring people to actually notify the police. So even if you are a married person and you are settling even in-law disputes, you have to notify the police.
You have to notify the police.
Yes, so even 3 people gathering somewhere on the streets is not going to be allowed if this law is actually, allowed. If this law is, if it is met law.
And you will understand and appreciate me. We've been following elections and covering elections. Such, contentious legislations, they tend to come to surface.
But not 3 people, George. Not 3 people.
Sometimes I really wonder, is it like they have a diversionary, tactics so that people can concentrate on that and lose the focus on what is, at hand?
I think it's just intimidation tactics,
That could be true, and the stakes ahead of the election could not be higher. We are looking at over 8.7 million registered voters. And today we are joined by one of the most central figures in this race, Brian Mundubile. He is a prominent constitutional lawyer and a heavyweight in Zambian politics. He is presidential candidate for the Tonse Alliance, a new opposition coalition built for one sole purpose, and that is to challenge President Hakainde Hichilema.
Now, looking at recent posts cited by local media, Mundubile and the Tonse Alliance have been gaining some real momentum in the country, especially in regional strongholds and also online. We've seen him, gathering a lot of followers, especially on his social media platforms when you visit them. However, with just 3 months to go, the incumbent President Hichilema is still having a very strong, powerful, he's having strongholds in several parts of the country, and people can't help but wonder, do you think Mundubile can actually make it,
And for those who are following closely, Mundubile isn't a new face. He is a veteran of the Patriotic Front Party, that is the PF, the party that governed under the late Edgar Lungu, and he's served both as a leader of opposition and a chief whip.
Right. And what's really intriguing is the origin of the Tonse Alliance.
Yes.
It was originally whispered to be a plan B for the former president Edgar Lungu. Remember, he was still planning to come back again, especially when he was facing eligibility hurdles in his PF party. There's a lot of problems within the PF party as we speak in Zambia. And with Mundubile now at the helm, it has evolved into the primary vehicle aimed at uniting an already fragmented opposition in Zambia at the moment. Imagine Hichilema is probably like waxing strong and thinking like they are so divided. How can they succeed so divided against themselves?
I think that is a very comfortable position for an incumbent because you just like, okay, I just want, this fragmentation to keep on going even towards the end of the election. Now we are talking about 3 months to the elections, Mimi, and I like the word fragmentation. It's a core issue in this upcoming election. And that's why I started my conversation with Brian Mundubile by asking him straight out, is this disintegration going to cost him the election?
Yes. There are several other political parties that are contesting on their own. We think the effort to unite the opposition is not over. We'll continue right even beyond the nomination date.
And when you speak about, a consolidated front, without the Patriotic Front, could that be considered as a solid alliance, as you approach this election?
You may unpackage that and look at the actual membership of the Patriotic Front. Majority of members of parliament from the Patriotic Front are under the Tonse Alliance. So really, it's a question of how you may want to view this. Is it Patriotic Front as a party by name, or is it Patriotic Front by membership? If it's by membership, I'm glad to report to you that the Tonse Alliance has actually got 80% of the Patriotic Front membership.
Even if you're inviting us to view it in that particular way, we choose to view it by what we're gathering from the ground. And we are aware that a number of, presidential aspirants have already expressed their interest to vie. How can you boast of a united, opposition when there is no unity around, a credible vision?
We have every hope that the other opposition political parties and leaders will heed to the core and come to join so that together we can form a formidable force that should be able to face the current government in the August 2026 election.
Yeah, and I'm pretty glad you mentioning the word hope. And when you look at Zambia's opposition today, do you see hope or confusion?
I see hope. Like I said earlier, we started maybe with 5 political parties coming together. We are now reporting 22 political parties coming together. The confusion that you may see in the opposition is actually artificial. It's designed by the ruling party. It's financed by the ruling party. They corrupt members of parliament with huge sums of money and corrupt them.
Mimi, I'm sure it's a very familiar script. I've heard this a lot from many opposition, candidates, and especially towards the election.
And it's quite a sad reality that we are seeing that every time there's an election in any African country, despite the successful debt restructure and inflation stabilization at 7.1% as of March 2026 this year, there's these daily struggles when we are looking at the lifestyles, the living standard of people in Zambia.
Yes.
And when you look at these figures, they're just official figures. Yeah. In terms of reality on the ground, we have something else, because according to the BTI Transformation Index, nearly 81% of people in Zambia are actually living on less than $3.65 a day. That is not anything at all. And for them, the top priority isn't these policies. They need food to eat.
Yes.
They need access to job opportunities. They need to see things just moving fine, not these numbers.
Yes. And then there is, the job crisis. Official figures place unemployment at 12.9% according to the 2024 labor force survey, and that is by the ministry in Zambia. But if you talk to people on the street, I'm sure the figures could be even higher.
Tell you what, George, people in Zambia were facing this even before the current government, under Edgar Lungu. It was not any better. And they were wondering, what if we change, leadership? Would things change a little bit for us? And after that, you're still bringing the numbers to show that things have really not changed. So the question is, what actually makes the plan of Brian Mundubile different this time? What change is he going to bring to the people?
Yes, and that is a very interesting question that I would like also our Zambian followers to tell us what they think about it. And Mundubile has been very vocal critic of the current leadership. So I pushed him on the specifics. What would he do in his first year to slash, say, debt and, create jobs? And more importantly, why should Zambians then trust what he's telling them?
Right.
What we think is urgent, unemployment levels. And we know that employment is a primary metric for economic success. So we are in a hurry to create employment. We want to create employment through industrialization. It's possible to create more jobs within the mining sector by coming up with legislation that support local content, so that the local companies can participate effectively in this particular sector.
I'll just have to come in. We know all this, Honorable Brian. So what is your concrete promise to Zambians, something that we can hold you to account to in case you are elected the next president?
What I bring out as regards industrialization and creating jobs in the mining sector, in the agriculture sector, in the tourism sector, in the creative arts sectors, in the digital economy, are all contained in our party manifesto. So you are able to hold us to it because it's a promise that we make. It's a social contract that we're signing with the Zambian people.
Yeah, but maybe someone may argue this is, common political rhetoric, synonymous with, political campaigns. What would be the measurable, difference in the first 12 months? Not issues, promises, but concrete actions that people can see and, feel their daily lives have really changed.
Well, like I said, first of all, implementation of policies is through the civil service to ensure that we depoliticize the civil service. Number two will be reforms around constitutionalism and legal reform. And then we'll begin to look at various legislation, especially legislation that borders on the infringement of the rights of the people. The Zambian people today cannot speak because of certain legislation that has been introduced. We are also in a hurry to ensure that we create employment.
How many people will you employ in your first months within the leadership?
The measure where we bring out legislation to promote local content will immediately create 50,000 jobs. The digital economy will create up to 95,000 jobs. So if you put together the 12 farming blocks right across the country, you are going over 300,000 jobs in the agricultural sector, in addition to the many other jobs in these other sectors that I've outlined.
So when you listen to Brian Mundubile, it just looks like the same script, that's been rehearsed.
Going to create jobs.
People don't generally trust the opposition because they feel like the one who is in government now was in the opposition just a few years ago and failed to deliver.
And maybe they promised even more than 300,000 jobs then.
Right.
Yes.
They were saying we are going to provide jobs in the tourism sector, in the digital sector, in
agricultural sector
and so on and so forth. And nothing happened. And when they look at the current government, they are wondering, can we still support President Hichilema after he made a lot of promises and we are not seeing results?
That is a very pertinent concern to many Zambians. And that's why we took our microphones to the streets. We wanted to hear directly from the people whose lives are actually on the ballot. Our correspondent, Kathy Short, spoke to some of them.
What matters to me the most now is a change in leadership. Since 1964, Kaunda's time, to date, we've had over seven presidents. And each time, each leader comes with our own views and own promises. But they're delivering the said promises is yet to be discovered.
I don't think Mr. Brian Mundubile is fit to stand as the Republican president Reason being, if you look at the current president, Mr. Hakainde Hichilema, the things that he has done, and a lot, if I say countrywide, they are benefiting, such as the issue of cash transfers.
I think the real question is, what kind of a leader does Zambia need today? I'm a youth, so I can only speak for the youth because that's where I belong. So most of them have touched on youthful issues, but we would like them to get deeper. The problem is politicians really have a lot to say, but they haven't put in much time to really listen to what we have to say. So if it could be the other way around and they considered what we really want, it would be better. But for now, all of them have something to say, and we are yet to see which one will go forward.
In fact, they have a lot to say.
Yes.
And one major issue now in Zambia is corruption.
Yes.
We know that it's been a hurdle in the country. It's also estimated to cost the nation roughly $500 million US dollars in lost tax revenue annually from the mining sector alone. And it's the primary battleground for this election. People want to know, what are these opposition leaders promising?
That's very true, Mimi, because that is the question many people will ask, like, how do you deal with corruption? Because we know that Zambia is one of the richest countries in Africa in terms of resources, but there are a lot of leakages in terms of corruption. And you know, after some initial progress, Zambia's Corruption Perception Index, that is the CPI score, actually slipped from 39 to 37 in 2025, and that is according to Transparency International. It points to abuse of office, people who are eager to, you know, benefit themselves at the expense, you know, of the public.
It's always the case. The government, of course, is pushing back and saying that the UPND party is pointing to about 300 million kwacha that they've recovered, from the assets as proof that they are actually cleaning the house. And I know that in my country, where I come from, Cameroon, there's this whole Operation Hawk that goes on to recover, stolen public funds that we never see where this money is going to.
Yes, and most interestingly is that when opposition, figures who've been mentioned in corruption cases, like our guest today, Brian Mundubile, is also been, summoned by the anti-corruption
Even
body.
his leader, who is now of late.
Yes, definitely, and they claim that it's a witch hunt, and therefore it is lost in between the politics. So there is no realistic front of fighting corruption in the country.
When you pressed him on these issues, what did he say?
Let's hear what he told us.
Yes, like you rightly pointed out, I was part of the previous government, and of course served in various capacities, as I earlier said. Together with friends, we've come and we've learned from the mistakes that were made in the past. Corruption is one of the areas we want to tackle, as Tonse. We've looked at the corruption under the current regime. Corruption is corruption. There is no corruption too big and corruption too small. But if you were to draw comparisons, today we are talking about $10 billion illicit financial flows. So maybe in comparison to what was reported previously, those amounts will be way, way below. Not that we encouraged corruption because the scale was smaller, but we want to draw comparisons so that the Zambian people can know. We have had mines, shares and equity in mines transferred to friends, like they are giving away birthday presents. So that's a sort of corruption that we're looking at. And
And interesting enough, Honorable Brian, you are part of, that government of the late President Edgar Lungu. And the same things that you are raising today are what Zambians were hearing, back then. So what concretely are you going to do differently?
The challenges that we've identified so far, when you look at the appointments of senior officers and commissioners in the Anti-Corruption Commission, they are done by the president. The president appoints the chairperson of the commission. He also appoints the director general of the commission. And at the same time, he places the commission under State House. So you have the commissioner, the chairperson of the commission reporting to State House, and you have the director general reporting directly to the president. So there's a big problem, there's a big governance challenge there.
So how are you going to change this yourself?
Firstly, we are going to separate the two. The appointment of the chairperson and the appointment of the director general of the Anti-Corruption Commission will be taken away from State House and taken away from the president. The reforms that we introduce will be such that the day the Anti-Corruption Commission delivers a report to the president is the same day that it delivers a report to parliament. We have reports of ministers that are facing corruption charges under the SEC. The Anti-Corruption Commission can't move because President Hakainde Hichilema has not allowed them to complete the investigations or charges against his ministers.
You're stressing on, the reform agenda of the Anti-Corruption Commission itself. And we are aware that you've also been summoned before by this particular commission. Do you think just by reforming the commission is enough to, solve the country from that corruption scourge?
Not at all. Actually, what I was coming to, we are going further to even redefine what corruption is, enlarge the definition of corruption. At Tonse, we do not think corruption is a mere giving or receiving of bribes. We think that it involves all actions and decisions that are made in private interest over and above public interest. And this will involve administration, policy, and legislation.
You've nailed on the point of, the reform agenda of the anti-corruption body in the country. But to most of our Zambian followers, I think their keen interest is how will you deal with the corrupt officials?
We will be very decisive. The reason why we are separating the board from the DG and also introducing a new reporting, the report landing at the same time at Parliament and State House, is to allow for the law enforcement agencies to do their work unimpeded. The difference now is that you have 10 ministers facing corruption charges, and the Anti-Corruption Commission today is unable to move because they have to write a letter to the Minister of Home Affairs, who also writes a letter to State House seeking permission to prosecute these corrupt individuals.
That was quite tough, but very well insightful there.
Yeah, indeed. And of course, he's making claim that things will be different, but that is a matter of wait and see.
Right. And what do we do under the baobab when we want to lighten the mood a little bit?
Of course, it's not just about talking about the deep issues. We try to retreat into the shades of wisdom of this beautiful tree and try to know our guests on the other side. So here is the rapid fire segment.
What drew you into politics?
The love for Zambia.
Okay, you use the initials BM8. Why?
B for Brian, M for Mundubile, 8 as 8th president.
So one African leader you look up to?
Nelson Mandela.
What does Brian Mundubile do when you're not on a campaign trail or talking politics?
I like to socialize. I go to my village and learn more about my ancestors.
What is that special name that they call you that we don't know?
They call me Kaluvula.
Oh, Kaluvula. Interesting. So how would you describe politics in just one word?
Challenging.
One thing you would change about your past?
Listen more.
What is that name that you call your wife that no one knows? That special pet name?
I call her baby all the time.
And Zambia today in just one word?
Zambia is disorganized.
Mimi, I just like the fact that you can change your hairstyle at any given time.
Thank
swiftly.
you. Thank you.
They both look beautiful anyway.
Thank you.
Now, back to the core issues. One of the most troubling trends we are seeing is the documented rise in political repression in Zambia. You mentioned earlier on about this public gathering bill that is, raising contention as well. As we inch closer to August, international rights groups are increasingly describing the environment for dissent in Zambia as, tense to Mimi.
And hostile. This is a really sharp contrast, from promises that the same administration made several years ago that, we are going to make things quite easier. There's going to be no repression. We are not going to be hostile towards, dissents, and we're not going to stop meetings or gatherings from taking place. But we've seen contrary reports from Human Rights Watch. We've also seen, Amnesty International rebuking the government, the current administration, for, violation of human rights.
And that is worrying, especially as people head to the election. And perhaps the most shocking flashpoint occurred in May 2026. The Zambian government effectively cancelled they cancelled actually the Rights Conference, the world's premier summit for human rights and technology, with just days to go before the opening. That was unprecedented.
And that's something that really sent shock waves through the international community. Imagine everything was already put in place, the finances.
It was not expected from Zambia.
It was not expected. And there was a lot of reactions as well following this cancellation. So we had to ask our guest, Honorable Mundubile, what is his take on this shrinking democratic space in Zambia? This is what he told us.
The only convictions you have today are against opposition leaders, and they're facing charges of hate speech. They're facing charges of seditious practices and all that. So clearly the justice system has collapsed completely. It's been weaponized against the opposition.
To avoid political hypocrisy. Wasn't this the same case when your alliance was in power?
Not at all, and not at all. We have very good examples of our own political party leaders that were sent to jail. We had the serving minister who was imprisoned, for corruption. We had another minister who was fired and was in court up to the time that we lost power. This has never been the case under the UPND. Not a single minister has even been summoned to be questioned by either the Anti-Corruption Commission or indeed the police.
Yeah, and I'm sure you will tell us also that it will also be totally different under your leadership. But let's move forward. Do you genuinely believe that the upcoming elections will be free and fair?
We don't believe the upcoming elections will be free and fair, and we have reasons for believing that. So the starting point is to look at the composition of the Electoral Commission of Zambia. You will find that Electoral Commission of Zambia is superintended over by UPND cadres, starting with the chairperson of the commission, Madam Zalomes. Independence of the ECZ, it's not enough for them to be independent. They also should be seen to be independent.
Yeah. So what's the plan on your side? Are you participating in an election that you already know will not be free and fair?
We have no choice but to participate. And we also believe that the will of the Zambian people will prevail. The country needs national renewal. It needs national restoration. So therefore, as a leader elected by other presidents to lead the alliance, I feel it's an imperative that we proceed to participate in this election to redeem the people of Zambia.
Other than, sorting the domestic issues, Zambia is increasingly navigating pressures from global powers, particularly China and the United States, amid, your economic and diplomatic tensions. Do you believe Zambia today is making independent national decisions, or is it becoming too influenced by the external powers? And how would your leadership change that?
Well, first of all, historically, Zambia has been non-aligned. Zambia is a friend to all. We relate with both the East and the West equally. When it comes to economic diplomacy, we ensure that our dear investors get a fair return for their investment, whilst also ensuring that the Zambians also get their fair part for their resources that are in this country.
Yeah, and how would you, in this particular case, deal with the controversial health deal with the United States if you are the one, in charge today?
If I was the one in charge today, firstly, I would look at the details. As it is now, we have no details regarding this particular MOU. We get stories from social media, for instance, that the U.S. would like to give Zambia assistance of up to 1.5 billion in the health sector. And in exchange, they would want to extract rare minerals for another 25 years. Obviously, at the face of it, it doesn't look like a fair deal. But like I said, we can only respond to it comprehensively if we appreciate all the salient features of that particular agreement.
Well, as you've heard today, the road to August 13th is paved with complex choices for Zambians. But beyond the manifestos and the rallies, we have to ask what actually makes a suitable candidate for Zambia's future.
Amid the fragmented opposition. Now, Zambia has long been a beacon of peaceful transitions in Africa. To keep that flame alive, the path forward must be built on unity and a relentless respect for the institutions that protect everyone, regardless of political affiliations.
Yes, so we want to hear from you. In your view, what is the single most important quality Zambia needs in its next leader?
Share your thoughts in the comments, and for more honest conversations about African politics, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, DW Africa. And where can people also watch or listen to Under the Baobab?
Yes, you can follow us through Spotify or Apple Podcast. My name is Jojo Kachi. Many thanks for following the conversation.
And I am Mimi Mefonewu. Bye.